Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our monthly series, Florida Pulse, where we bring you experts to talk about issues important to you. I'm engagement editor John A. Torres with Florida Today here on the beautiful Space Coast. Today, we will be talking about some of the new laws that take effect here in Florida on July 1st. And with that, I would like to welcome for a third time to Florida Pulse our panelists, two reporters with the Tallahassee Democrat who are all over state politics like white on rice, and who host the podcast Inside Florida Politics, John Kennedy and James Call. Thanks, guys, for being on the show.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for being here.
So why don't we just get right to it and start with the state coffers? I keep hearing that Florida has lots of excess money, that we're doing great. The state budget will go into effect July 1st, if I'm not mistaken. What are some of the highlights of this new budget?
Well, John, the state budget is the biggest ticket item that takes effect on July 1st. This year, it's a $109.9 billion budget. That, of course, is the largest in state history. Almost every year, it's the largest in state history. The budget rarely goes backwards. This year, it's a sizable amount of money. They have billions of dollars in reserves. They also received, the state of Florida also received about $3.5 billion in coronavirus relief funds from the federal government, and that's included in this budget. That helps supplement a lot of things, and it's gotten a lot of Governor Ron DeSantis's spending priorities done. There's a little bit of irony there, of course, because it's a Democratic-led Congress in Washington that has steered this money to Florida. And Governor DeSantis is one of the biggest antagonists of President Joe Biden, and we'll cover some of that later in our discussion. But the budget has a lot in it, obviously, as you can imagine. There's pay raises for teachers, pay raises for state employees, almost 5.5% this year, and also bringing state employees to a $15 minimum wage for the first time in history. There's funding for the environment, more work on blue-green algae, that has been plaguing the state over the years. More money for springs, freshwater springs, to try to repair and restore. Same with the Everglades. Education-wise, the state is topping $8,000 per student. There's about 2.9 million Florida students, and this is the first time in state history that the average for each student is going to be above $8,000. So there's a lot in it in this budget, and the spending is pretty free right now. So I guess that's a good thing. One of the things that's hovering over the state, of course, is inflation. The governor has made a lot of that. Somewhat ironically, maybe, he vetoed a $1 billion inflation fund that the legislature had tucked into the budget. He felt that this money that was going to be held sort of in a reserve, but able to be tapped by agencies if they found their spending priorities hampered by rising costs over the next year. The governor vetoed that, thinking that this was going to lead to agencies spending more freely than they should. It would discourage belt tightening, which he seems to want to do if inflation starts restricting how the state manages all the different duties that it has to do. So anyway, that's kind of it. And of course, there's tax breaks tucked in as well. We'll cover some of those later, but about $1.2 billion in tax breaks this year, covering a wide array of interests. So there's a lot in it, a lot of spending this year.
Yeah, the numbers, it's a numbers story, but, I don't want to dismiss the fact that it's a historic pay raise. It's a historic pay raise for state workers, 5.3%. And more than 17,000 state workers currently make less than $15 an hour. And they will immediately get a pay raise starting July 1st, which I think I believe it averages out to about $2,000, per state employee, which is a nice bump. It's a historic pay raise because they went a decade without any pay raises, and we have the leanest state workforce in the country per 1,000 residents, and we have the lowest pay rate per country in the country. So it's a historic pay raise, and I don't want to dismiss that. In law enforcement, everybody gets a $5,000 bonus. There's a $1,000 recruitment bonus, for folks who law enforcement's out of state who relocate to Florida and go to work. So there's a lot of that. But, it's balanced by $40 billion in federal money. And we have a legislature and a governor who's constantly complaining about Washington, but they use $40 billion to balance their budget. The per pupil spending, yes, it is over $8,000, but it is still less when adjusted for inflation. It is still less than what the state was spending in 2010. And for the state employees, the one note that I wanted to make, since 2011, between 2011 and 2021, state employees, due to inflation, lost $4,200 from their pay raise. And in that decade, they only had one standalone pay raise. So the historic pay raise is welcome for state employees if you talk to them, but still. And the other thing that I'd like to point out, there are still 22,000 people, developmentally disabled people, on the Agency for Persons with Disability waiting list. These are the most severely sick individuals among us, the most vulnerable. They wait decades to get on this Medicaid waiver list. The state is spending $95 million this year to reduce that number by 800, but it's still 22,000 people on the Medicaid waiver list waiting for services. And, the state just lets them sit there.
Wow. Well, that's a whole other issue, I think, and a whole other episode of this Florida Pulse. But I just want to go back to something that John said a little bit earlier. We all like to have money in the bank. We like to have that rainy day fund. You said the state has billions with a B, not millions, in reserves. And I mean, that's great, I guess, for some natural catastrophe. But when I see potholes on the roads, or I see state attorneys' offices that don't have a conviction integrity unit because they say it costs too much money, what's the idea behind keeping so much money in reserve? That's the first part. The second is the budget seems to have a lot of increases in things, and we're not touching that reserve money. Where is this money coming from for the budget?
Well, a couple of things you raised there. On the reserves, the governor and Republican leaders have long talked about the need to have sizable reserves to help the states, help maintain the state's good bond rating. This is from the financial houses of New York. It helps state government and some of the ancillary agencies, government that rely on the state's bond rating to borrow money when they have to do major infrastructure repairs somewhere. The state's bonding capacity is better. If they ever want to borrow money to build university buildings or community college facilities, that's the kind of thing that a lot of state borrowing goes to. The state has been reluctant to borrow much in recent years. So it's a little bit of a paradox. They're saving money for reserves so they can borrow more easily, yet politically they don't like to borrow. So there they have it. But that's part of the thinking behind putting money away in reserves. However, as you point out, John, and James also just pointed out a moment ago, there are needs out there, vast needs in this state, of which Florida is very much a state of haves and have-nots. There are people living very well in the state, but there are people, below the poverty level all over, and working Floridians that are barely getting by. A little bit more state handouts, state aid in some areas could be beneficial to this state's overall health, and also its infrastructure and its economy. People with more money tend to spend more. And that's also when getting to your question, John, about, where is this money coming from? The state's economy has bounced back pretty well, despite the massive hit that it took with the COVID-19 pandemic, and is still feeling. However, we have seen tourism is back to levels that, a lot of people 2 years ago didn't think we were going to be back to. Americans are traveling, it seems, right now, and that helps a state like Florida. So there is Florida gets about 3/4 of its revenue from the sales tax. So any kind of economic activity where people are exchanging goods. The other thing too is housing. Housing has been going through the roof right now. The state gets some money from documentary stamps that are put on real estate transactions. So money is flowing into the state coffers from those kind of economic activities. So all that is helping, pump up the state right now. And then, of course, the federal government also has been pretty free with spending as far as trying to have coronavirus relief aid to the states. And Florida has been a beneficiary of that too. Of course, that has been politicized now too, because it's something now that's seen as a Joe Biden inflation driver. You'll hear the governor talk about that a lot. But the state has been the beneficiary of it because, the governor himself is spending a lot of those Biden bucks on some of his priorities. So that's kind of the yin and yang of Florida finances right now.
Well, there's growth. Florida benefits from growth, and Florida keeps growing. And Florida's and people, like John said, people are traveling. And there's the $40 billion from the federal government that's helping with the budget. And it's like Charlie Reedy, a former aide to former Governor Bob Graham, once said, Florida is cheap and proud of it. And so that's how you get the $1 billion worth of reserves.
Wow, I like it.
It's a spending priority. We used to be able to say it fit right in with the economic philosophy. Government should not be a player in the marketplace because government is irrational with spending. And so government spending is a bad idea and it's a bad thing. So it's good to hold back money. And Florida is always well positioned for an economic downturn, given that the state always has this rainy day reserve. But there is the one thing that, Florida does not like spending money on social services.
Now, no talk of new laws would be complete without mentioning how our governor, Ron DeSantis, seems to relish in the culture wars and taking part in the culture wars and being in the middle of it. And there are some new laws that have been dubbed the Don't Say Gay bill and the Stop Woke, etc. Tell us about the impact of some of these new laws that take effect July 1st and what their role is in the culture wars. And I mean, are they only political ploys, or are they, real laws that will actually, mean something to some people?
Well, the culture war legislation is incredibly divisive, but it does play to a national audience that Governor DeSantis is really courting. We all know Governor DeSantis has his eyes on the White House in 2024. He first has to run for re-election this year, but a lot of these issues that he is raising are some of the most popular talking points on Fox News and conservative media. The Stop Awoke Act, as it was described by the governor, that basically limits what kind of speech can be conducted in schools, universities, and in the workplace when it comes to some issues involving race and gender inequity, I guess you might call it, along the way. The governor has targeted a long time ago critical race theory, which you hear a lot about, across conservative media. This is the legal and academic research that kind of looks at how race remains a incredibly driving influence in our society today, and that what the governor has limited in this legislation that he proposed and also signed into law is basically any discussion of critical race theory in schools, and also anything that would be race related that would make a listener feel uncomfortable. That person could be then able to sue their local schools, their teachers, their universities and universities could lose funding if it became known that they were teaching some of these, courses or having discussions that allowed for the concept of race as a still prevalent force in American society, and something that is a negative that has hurt many white people, I guess, is the large victim class that the governor seems to be coming in to defend. It's a very arcane topic, obviously, and it's going to be very hard to implement in the schools and universities. But what it has done is it has been a shot across the bow in schools and universities and in the workplace, where every company has an HR diversity policy. Well, everybody is going to be wary of violating this new law that is really in the eye of the beholder, in the eye of the victim. The person can complain about what their company has said about, the problems that Black people have felt in the workplace, or trouble that women have had in advancing in jobs. Those are the kind of things that the governor has weighed in on. And then, of course, there's the parental rights legislation that was known by critics as the Don't Say Gay bill, another speech limiting thing that is mostly focused on schools, where schools could not teach in grades K through 3, they could not teach anything regarding gender, transition, sexual orientation. It's something that really was not widely taught, was not taught at a big level in schools. But the governor has kind of weaponized it now against basically the LGBTQ community. And so the governor has really opened up a can on that, and that's become a problem.
About that, John. One second, I wrote a column wondering about the "Don't Say Gay" bill, so-called,
right,
and just wondering, why is it needed? How many teachers are actually teaching this stuff in K through 3? And I just got absolutely murdered, emailed. I mean, the worst emails I've ever received in my life, phone calls, calling me all types of names, assuming to know what party I am affiliated with, and
sure,
et cetera, and just incredible. He has weaponized it. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, very divisive, and there are people out there who believe that this is going on. Yes, the supporters of this can find some anecdote where some teacher brought in a book that was sort of speaking about, parents with two same-sex, parents, right, or some kind of transgender oriented book, but it is not widespread.
It opens up the teachers, and it opens up the school districts to lawsuits.
Right.
If you think the law is being violated, you can sue the school and you can recover damages. So it is a speech limiting bill, and it opens up for a bevy of lawsuits, and all you have to do is have a disgruntled parent. We have a story here in Leon County, which basically that's what it comes down to. And so it ties down the school district. It drives up the cost of education. This is money that is spent on legal fees and not on educating the children. And like you both point out, what is the problem that is being addressed here? No one can really say what is the problem that's being addressed here. I mean, do we have examples of homosexuality or gender confusion being taught or discussed in kindergarten or first grade? Some parents, all you have to do is make the allegation and you can go to court.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I was going to say, it figures into the larger, fight with Disney right now, because Walt Disney Company came in opposition to this legislation, and the DeSantis administration went wild on that, and they, in a special session in the month of May, they passed legislation that really jeopardizes Disney's status in Florida as a sort of a self-governing, company in Central Florida. There's something called the Reedy Creek Improvement District that was created back in the 60s when Disney first arrived, that gave Disney a lot of authority over everything that happened within the confines of that large park environment. And the legislation basically will subject the Reedy Creek Improvement District to review next year by the Florida legislature, whether that's going to continue or not.
And this part of the story, supports, like what a lot of people would paint that this is really cynical policymaking on the part of the ruling party. That law does not go into effect until 2023. So, like, as in the words of Representative Randy Fine, Disney can reconsider its behavior in asking for special favors from the state of Florida. But, Disney last week announced that it was delaying the moving of 2,000 jobs to Central Florida. Jobs that pay on average more than $100,000 each. And that move was supposed to be completed sometime by the end of this year and has been delayed until 2026. So, that's one of the real world effects of the cultural war that's going on.
Wow. And now you both, you kind of hit on this a little bit, but I want to talk more in depth about abortion. We're, waiting on pins and needles to see exactly what the U.S. Supreme Court, does. Obviously, a leaked opinion, was leaked. Everybody kind of knows what is coming down. But Florida is already ahead of that game, right? And they're already making changes to our abortion laws here in the state. What changes and what does it mean?
Does it mean, well, up until now, abortion in Florida has been protected by a privacy provision in the state constitution, and this law may bring into question whether that provision comes into play, and if it does, it goes to the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, where the abortion opponents are confident that with the makeup of the state Supreme Court by Governor DeSantis, that it will reconsider whether or not the privacy amendment is applicable. And so, we're going to have a summer of, like you say, sitting on needs and pins and needles, because yes, Florida is restricting abortion access. There will be a court challenge. And given the makeup of the state and the federal Supreme Court, those who support access to abortion are not optimistic about how the courts will rule.
What that new law does is it limits makes abortion available only after only before the 15th week of pregnancy, 15 or earlier weeks of pregnancy. It formerly was 24 weeks was considered sort of the up to point that an abortion could take place in Florida. That 15 week is identical to the Mississippi law that is now before the United States Supreme Court. So Florida's law will comply easily if the United States Supreme Court upholds the Mississippi law. Then, of course, there are questions about whether Florida might go even further based on what that United States Supreme Court ruling says and what kind of authority it gives states to limit abortion even further. So I think there's a good chance that probably not this year with an election, looming. But I think by the next legislative session, we're going to see some more restrictive abortion legislation in Florida if that United States Supreme Court ruling authorizes it in states. There is certainly a constituency in the Florida legislature, in the Republican-led Florida legislature, for stricter abortion laws right now in Florida. But what we have right now going into effect July 1st is that 15-week standard.
And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the public. Once it goes into effect, how does that play out, and does that mobilize anyone? And the other question is, does it demobilize? Now that the anti-abortion or the people who want to restrict abortion, now that they've achieved their victory, do they stop showing up at the polls? Do they lose interest? Do they declare victory and go home? So how this plays out is going to be something to watch. I mean, the impact of the new restrictions in Florida, will be interesting to watch.
Do you guys, could you ever foresee if Roe versus Wade is overturned and these abortion laws are getting stricter, Do you foresee that maybe Florida would one day just ban abortions altogether?
Well, there have been what are called heartbeat bills that have been proposed in the past. They have never advanced in the Florida legislature. Those would be bills that would basically ban abortion in Florida. How that goes, I don't know, because as James pointed out, I mean, it's a interesting dynamic when it comes to Floridians' views of abortion. There are the 15-week standard that was approved this year was opposed by a majority of Floridians, at least in polls. So I don't know. I think perhaps even Republican legislators are very wary of what to do with this this authority if they get it from the United States Supreme Court. Remarkably, we've heard very little from Governor Ron DeSantis about abortion and the leaked opinion, as you pointed out, John. The governor has not really said too much about it. So I think they're all trying to feel their way through it right now, and they know that they're on the eve of a big election year, midterm election among congressional seats as well, with Republicans eager to take back control of Congress from the Democrats. And I think they're uneasy about how abortion may figure into these elections. So for the moment, they're kind of quiet. But I think after the elections, I think anything could happen in this state.
Yeah, it's a lot like the dog finally catches the car, and now what does it do with it? But there are elements in the Florida legislature that would favor an outright ban on abortion, no doubt about it. With the current makeup of the government, this is the debate would be held. There will be that discussion.
Okay, well, we've had some heavy topics here to discuss. I want to change the tone slightly here because as a lover of key lime pie, a Florida staple, I was very concerned when I heard that strawberry shortcake is going to go into effect July 1st as the official dessert of Florida. Is that correct? And what is happening?
Yes. Currently it's the official state dessert, but it has to have Florida dairy products on top of it to qualify. It was sponsored by Senator Danny Burgess.
I mean, it's kind of. I mean, I like strawberry shortcake, but it's it's very.
I don't think you appreciate the importance of strawberries to Florida. We grow over 100,000 acres of strawberry.
Well, that's what it is. Yes. Okay.
And we account for 75% of the winter strawberry crop. I mean, Florida strawberry is very important to Florida culture. Among potatoes, watermelons, and other berries, strawberries is the second highest value crop.
Wow. Well, I did not know
Very
that.
good. And John, you can take some solace in the fact that key lime pie is still the official state pie.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay.
We have an official state dessert, but we also have official state pie.
Okay, good. We'll have to work on the official state milkshake for next year.
That'll be next year.
But the debate over the strawberry shortcake as the official state dessert, I mean, it was nothing like the debate over the key lime pie. I forget, that was how long ago was that? 12, 15 years ago, when the key lime pie became, because that's when you had the factions of supporters of pecan pie trying to derail the key lime pie, and then out of nowhere came supporters for the sweet potato pie.
Oh wow!
And it got to be a pretty messy situation there, leading up to the House floor debate.
It really did. It took many years for the key lime
right?
pie to become the state dessert. Yeah,
Or
the state pie. I'm sorry, state pie.
But this slid by without almost no notice. I mean, that just shows you how much support Floridians have for strawberries.
I guess so. Well, guys, we have touched on quite a few things. I want to look ahead. You mentioned the Reedy Creek Disney stuff, but what else can we look forward to in 2023? Perhaps bills that maybe have been picking up steam over the years that you think we might be talking about at this time next year.
I think guns may reemerge. Despite what has happened recently, there is a movement among gun rights advocates in Florida for constitutional carry, and there does not seem to be anything that prevents them from from pushing their issue. Like usually when you're associated with some issue and it gets bad publicity, you lay low and try to be quiet for a bit until the news cycle runs out. But the gun right advocates, they are so persistent and they keep pushing it. I really think that guns may emerge as a topic next year, or gun safety.
That's a good point. I think the governor has pledged his allegiance to seeing an open carry law passed during his time as governor. If he is reelected this year, he will have some more time to work on that. Open carry would basically be you could openly carry a weapon, without any kind of concealment needed and any kind of regulation needed. So that's something that the gun rights, the gun rights community is very much promoting and want to see through. Will it happen next year? That's a question mark. We have had such a spate of horrible mass shootings around this nation that it has even prompted Congress to finally act. And the steps that Congress has taken are not perhaps that strong, but they're something. So would Florida step into putting it in reverse by, openly allowing people to display firearms everywhere? It's something that, frankly, even Republican legislators have been wary of it because of its potential impact on tourism in the state. The idea that, people are going to feel kind of uneasy if they're walking around the state or walking around the beach and somebody is packing a weapon openly. So that's been a complicated issue in Florida, but its time may come again soon. Similarly, we talked about abortion. I think that's something that we're going to see come up again next year as well. Some kind of enhanced restrictions on abortion, still to be seen, I guess, based on that United States Supreme Court ruling that we're all anticipating. It's still to be seen is how far it will go. And then, as we mentioned, the Reedy Creek issue with Disney, what's going to happen? Will Reedy Creek endure? Will all the hoopla around the so-called "Don't Say Gay" bill die down by then? Post-election, and who knows what other the governor, if reelected, is going to be in full national mode next year, as we look to him probably seeking the presidency in 2024. So he's going to come up with plenty more cultural issues that are going to appeal to that Fox News audience. So, there's more to come. We haven't yet, fully envisioned what the issue of next year may be that, conservatives are promoting, but we're going to get them. You can bank on that.
And it could come in the realm of education. It could come in the realm of education. This past year, they passed a bill reforming tenure, which goes into effect July 1st at the university. And we have a new education commissioner. And apparently Senator Ray Rodriguez is in line to become chancellor of the state university system. So it looks like the forces, the governor is marshaling forces in the education spiral or sphere, or silo, in the education silo. And so I'd watch there.
Similarly, one piece of legislation that did not pass this year that was kind of surprising to me that it didn't pass was a bill that was going to make school board elections partisan. Candidates that run for school board right now run, no party affiliation. But this was going to make them Republicans or Democrats. And it was seen as a part of this whole parental rights movement where, a lot of this stems from fights over masks during the COVID-19 pandemic and just kind of the whole idea of a lot of conservative groups. We've seen Moms for Liberty at every school board around the state. This is a conservative advocacy group that, very broadly favors more parental rights and less control by school boards. So the idea that school boards could become partisan, that may reemerge next year. A lot of Republican-leaning candidates are running for school board elections this year in contests around the state. So we'll see how they do. Many of their primaries are going to be, or many of their elections will take place on August 23rd, which is the primary in the state. If conservatives do well in school board elections, maybe there will not be that much of a campaign to make them partisan, because they will have achieved their purpose without it. But if they don't achieve control over a lot of school boards this year, I think you may see that effort come back, where they want to label school board candidates either a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah, so for the overall question, this election is very relevant to the overall question about what will be on the agenda next legislative session, because all legislative seats are up in November, and the governor's on the ballot also, and they will determine the agenda. Now, it's quite possible that a lot of these bills that were passed this year become refined next year, or reconsidered when it comes time to start implementing them, or how they're played out. Now that the public is aware of them, hopefully that they're aware of them. But so the election really determines what the agenda will be.
Great. Well, awesome insight and great conversation. And I have a feeling we are not done with you guys for 2022. I'm sure this is going to be a pretty busy and wild election season. We will probably have you back on Pulse. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And before we leave, John, can you tell people how they can tune into the Inside Florida Politics podcast that you guys run?
Yes, we have a podcast that I take part in, along with Zach Anderson of the Sarasota Herald Tribune, the political editor there, and Antonio Finns, the political editor of the Palm Beach Post. We discuss Florida politics, and you can find us on Inside Florida Politics on Spotify, many other platforms that are for podcasts. So just Google us and you'll find us.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, guys, for tuning in, and thanks to the viewers for watching Florida Pulse, and we will see you next time. I'm John Torres, engagement editor with Florida Today here on the beautiful Space Coast. Thanks.